The Indian Council of Medical Research, or the ICMR, is the principal scientific body, at least for medical research in this country, and the chief advisor to the government of India. The ICMR, I've been noticing, has a strange obsession with hydroxychloroquine. It just doesn't give an inch. It keeps insisting that HCQ should be used and can be used, despite acknowledging now, finally, that the data is a bit dodgy. But the ICMR insists on using HCQ both in treatment and as a prophylaxis. Now, this is strange because, as I mentioned earlier, there are two big trials, randomized trials, double-blind, placebo-controlled randomized trials, which have shown that hydroxychloroquine is ineffective as a prophylactic and of little use as treatment. The first is the trial from Minnesota University. The Minnesota University randomized 800 people who were exposed to confirmed cases of COVID-19, divided them into two groups. In one group, they gave hydroxychloroquine, and in the control group, they gave a vitamin B complex stuff, some dummy tablet. And in the treated group for the prophylaxis, they gave 800 milligrams of HCQ to begin with, 600 milligrams after 6 to 8 hours, and then again 600 milligrams for the next 4 days. So that was the post-exposure prophylactic dose. The people who were treated were again two sorts. One was the high risk, that is people who had been in contact with a confirmed COVID-19 case for more than 10 minutes and within 6 feet without a mask or eye protection. This was the high risk post-exposure group. The other was the moderately severely exposed group, which was people who were with a mask but no eye protection. So we had two sorts of people who had been exposed to patients of COVID-19, and these were followed up for some time, and the researchers found that there was no difference in the development of COVID-19 as confirmed by a PCR test or by symptoms in both groups. So therefore, they concluded that HCQ was of little use for prophylaxis in people who were exposed to COVID-19. So that is one big study. The second big study was the British study, which was supervised by the Oxford University. This was called the recovery trial. Here they took 1,500 people who were down in hospital with COVID-19 and compared them with about 3,500 people who served as controls. The people who were given chloroquine were 1,500. Remember, this was again a double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized study, which is considered the gold standard trial, gold standard experiment, or gold standard studies in medicine or any scientific analysis. And what did they find? That they found that after a month, there was no difference in mortality in both the groups. The people who were given hydroxychloroquine, the mortality was around 26%, and the control group had a mortality of about 24%. So on an average, it was almost 1/4 died in both groups. So again, the conclusion was that HCQ was no good as treatment in patients of COVID-19, and the researchers stopped this HCQ arm in the recovery trial. Yesterday, the FDA has retracted its permission for HCQ to be used as a as a drug in a trial. So the emergency authorization usage has been stopped by the FDA. The French government has anyway banned the use of HCQ. So that is about HCQ. But we have today some very good news. This is very exciting news. People have called it fantastic. It is a major breakthrough in the treatment of COVID-19. For the first time now, we have a drug which actually has been found to reduce mortality significantly. That is, when we apply statistics, we actually find that mortality is reduced substantially. in people who were given this drug. The beauty of this drug is that it is a very cheap drug. It just costs about 2 to 3 rupees per tablet, and it is freely available in India, or at least till now. It is called Dexamethasone. It is a steroid, also called Decadron. It is the researchers have used it as a tablet and also as an injection. The people concerned were again from the University of Oxford, so they have done a brilliant job. They actually had randomized more than 11,500 patients of COVID-19, and in the HCQ group they had 4,500, but in the Decadron group they had almost 6,000 patients. So they gave 2,000 patients approximately one tablet or injection of 6 milligram of dexamethasone per day for 10 days only, and compared this with controls. The controls constituted almost 4,000 patients of COVID-19. Now I'll give you the stats right now. In the control group, the patients on a ventilator, the mortality was pretty high. It was 41%. 41% of patients on ventilators died in the study, in the control group. People who were given oxygen, there the mortality was about 25%. And people who were given neither oxygen nor put on ventilators, the mortality was 13%. Now what did the study find? The conclusions were drawn, I think, just today afternoon. They found that people on ventilators, the mortality was reduced significantly by 35%. That's a huge number, which means that 8 people on ventilators, one person life could be saved. One patient could be saved of 8 patients on a ventilator. Of patients given oxygen, out of 25, one person, one life could be saved. Here, the relative reduction of mortality was to the tune of 20%. So on ventilators, that means high-risk people, very advanced disease, mortality was reduced by Decadron by 35%, and in patients given oxygen, the mortality was reduced by 20%. There was no effect in patients who were not on oxygen. Now that is a very important thing to remember. This means that there were no adverse effects, but this means that people who do not need oxygen, people who have mild symptoms, would not benefit by either an injection of Decadron or a tablet of Decadron. The dose that was used was just 6 milligrams. And I think a 6 milligram tablet in India costs 2 to 3 rupees. So you have a total cost of 20 or 30 or 40 rupees. Now, I don't know whether the drug will be sold soon in black. And that is for the government or for the regulators to ensure that the drug is given freely to people. So this is very important. And this, again, was a part of the recovery trial. The recovery study is also studying some more drugs. As I mentioned again earlier, they have an arm using lopinavir and ritonavir. They have an arm using azithromycin. They have an arm using tocilizumab also. I have spoken about tocilizumab, and hopefully the results will be coming out very soon, because you don't need to follow up these patients for a long time. A follow-up of 28 days or 35 days would be enough to give you some important data and some important conclusions. So to conclude, this news is being splashed right now as I speak to you in all the major newspapers of the world. And tomorrow morning we'll have the news in our newspapers also. There should be headlines, because this is, I again repeat, and this has been said by the Health Secretary of England, that this is a major improvement in the situation. And the Brits are, of course, are extremely happy, because they have been the people to find out this result. And hopefully there will be more studies which would buttress this conclusion that dexamethasone helps people, actually cuts down mortality in people of COVID-19. So how do I conclude this short video? I think it is very important, because all of us have been quite nervous and quite tensed about how this pandemic will pan out, how it is actually unfolding. There has been a huge amount of stress. There has been a huge amount of actually distress in people, because on every single day I get more than a handful of patients who come to the hospital simply by stressed out. They're simply having complaints, odd complaints of odd chest pain, which is definitely not angina, not coronary disease, but they are under stress. I mean, you can well imagine this. People in the crores, coddled in their homes for so many weeks now, not being able to go out, not being able to do anything. So that does play on their minds. So hopefully this bit of data would shed some of the gloom in this country and across the world. And that is the reason why every news outlet in the world, whether it's the New York Times, whether it's the London Times, the Guardian, or any other, the Daily Mail, they're all reporting on this study and on this conclusion that for the first time we have solid scientific evidence that to a large extent mortality is reduced in severely ill people with COVID-19. And this I won't say this is a fantastic news or something extraordinary, but this is some glimmer of hope. This is some ray of sunshine, and definitely there is a modest improvement. If you can cut down mortality by 35%, that is a big chunk in the reduction of mortality. And this means that if there were 40,000 people who died in the United Kingdom, of these 40,000 people who died in the United Kingdom, remember, half of them were in the care homes. And these deaths could have been prevented. So in reality, we are talking about 20,000 deaths in the United Kingdom in the last 4 months. Of these 20,000 deaths, if we reduce 1/3, then we have a mortality of almost of 13,000 only. So that would have been those would have been the lives saved had they been given dexamethasone. But of course, we had no idea. The pandemic has been going on. The information on the disease changes by the hour. It is like an IPL test. It's like an IPL cricket match, not a test match. This is an IPL test match. Every hour we have more information, we have more news, we have data on the virus itself, whether it is mutating or not, what is the strain. But now we have, for the first time, ladies and gentlemen, I repeat, we have clear-cut information that a cheap and readily available drug works in this disease, particularly in people who are very, very sick. Okay, so thanks a lot, and we all can now rest today with some more hope and some bit of optimism regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you very much.